compassion fed his faith. The scorching sun of the desert, which kissed the golden domes of the Al-Hamad Palace, seemed unable to penetrate the fog of melancholy that enveloped the heart of Sultan Tariq. He was the ruler of a vast and prosperous kingdom, a man of unquestionable power and immeasurable wealth. His subjects respected him, his advisors feared him, and his enemies, well, his enemies rarely dared to show themselves, for the reputation of his justice, though sometimes severe, was unshakable. Yet behind the sumptuous brocades and glittering jewels that adorned his chambers and his own person, Tariq was a single father, a man tormented by loss and constant worry for his only daughter, Princess Layla. The grandeur of the palace, with its polished marbles that reflected light like mirrors of water and its vaulted ceilings that rose like the night sky, seemed only to accentuate the vastness of his solitude. Each step in the corridors echoed with an emptiness that no wealth could fill. Tariq's life had been irrevocably altered 10 years ago, when his beloved wife, Sultana Zara, died shortly after giving birth to Layla. The tragedy was twofold, for the little princess came into the world with a rare and debilitating condition that confined her to a wheelchair, robbing her of the ability to walk and sometimes even to feed herself with ease. Tariq, who had imagined a future of laughter and games with his daughter, of watching her run through the gardens and learning to ride the most beautiful Arabian horses, found himself confronted with a reality of doctors, therapists, and a silent pain that settled into every corner of his palace. He had summoned the most renowned healers from East and West, spending fortunes on exotic elixirs and treatments, but each attempt ended in disappointment, deepening the abyss of his despair. The image of Zara, with her gentle smile and eyes full of life, haunted his dreams, and the guilt for not having been able to save her was a heavy burden he carried each time he awoke. He loved Layla with an intensity that bordered on devotion, a love that was the only flame still burning in his chest. Her eyes, which were the mirror of Zara's soul, were the only true light in his life, a beacon in the midst of the darkness of his existence. But Tariq's love was a heavy love, laden with guilt and suffocating protection. He felt he had failed to protect Zara, and now his mission was to protect Layla from all the pain in the world, even if it meant isolating her. The palace, with its lush gardens filled with date palms and murmuring fountains, and its grand halls adorned with Persian tapestries and golden vases, became a gilded cage for the princess, and for Tariq, a constant reminder of his solitude and his helplessness. He was a sultan, but above all, he was a father who felt powerless before his daughter's fragility. With each smile from Layla, there was a pang of sadness in his heart, a lament for what she could never have, for the experiences that would be denied to her. He had sought the best doctors in the world, the most renowned healers, but the answer was always the same. There was no cure. That truth gnawed at him, transforming him into an even more withdrawn and distant man, even from his own feelings, building invisible walls around himself and his daughter. Layla, despite her condition, possessed a remarkably resilient spirit. Her hair, black as a moonless night, framed a delicate face, and her eyes, large and expressive, radiated an intelligence and curiosity that belied her physical fragility. She spent her days reading the ancient scrolls from the palace's vast library, drawing scenes of imaginary distant worlds, and observing the world through the palace windows, dreaming of adventures she knew she could never live. The wheelchair was an extension of her body, but also an invisible limit that separated her from the outside world. a silent barrier between her and freedom. She felt the weight of her father's concern, the veiled sadness in his eyes, and that made her try to be as cheerful and independent as possible to ease his burden a little. However, there were moments of profound loneliness, of longing for a connection that went beyond compassion or duty, a desire to be seen and loved for who she was, not for her condition. She wanted to be seen not just as the sick princess, but as Layla, a girl with dreams and fears, like any other, who yearned for a friend, a confidant who could understand the depth of her inner world. Far from the palace walls, in a modest neighborhood of the capital, with its narrow streets and adobe houses, lived Sofia. Her days were a succession of exhausting shifts at the Golden Oasis, a popular restaurant that served both the elite and the working class. Sofia was a young woman in her 20s, with brown eyes that reflected a mixture of weariness and unshakable kindness. Her hair, usually gathered in a tight bun to keep it out of the way while serving, was the color of honey, and her smile, though rare, was genuine and warm, capable of illuminating the face of whoever received it. Sofia's life had never been easy. Orphaned of her mother at an early age, she had assumed the responsibility of caring for her sick father and her two younger siblings. Her father, a former craftsman, had been afflicted with a lung disease that prevented him from working, and the constant cough that plagued him was a daily reminder of life's fragility. Every coin she earned was carefully saved for the rent of the small two-room house, the food that barely stretched for everyone, and the expensive medicines that kept her father alive. She woke before sunrise, prepared a simple breakfast for the family, and then walked long distances to the restaurant, smelling the aroma of fresh bread and spices emanating from the bakeries and markets that were just beginning to open. Her siblings, Omar and Fatima, were her greatest motivation. Omar, 10 years old, dreamed of becoming a scholar, and Fatima, 7, loved to draw with charcoal on the adobe walls. Sofia dreamed of studying, of becoming a teacher, of sharing the knowledge she so desperately wanted to acquire. But the reality of her family kept her bound to hard work and the monotonous routine of the restaurant, where the smell of grease and constant noise were her daily companions. Despite the difficulties, Sofia never lost her humanity. She saw the pain in others' eyes, the hurry of businessmen who barely looked at her, the contained joy of families celebrating small victories, and she treated everyone with the same dignity and respect. She had an innate capacity for empathy, to put herself in another's place, a rare and precious quality in a world that often seemed indifferent and cruel. Her faith, simple and profound, was her refuge and her strength, the anchor that kept her steady in the midst of life's storms. Every night, before sleep, she would kneel and give thanks for the small blessings, asking for strength for the next day. She believed that every person had a story, and that kindness, however small, could make a monumental difference, like a drop of water in the desert that over time could form an oasis. She remembered her mother's words, "Compassion is the light that guides hearts along the darkest paths." It was a Thursday afternoon, and the Golden Oasis was crowded. The aroma of spices, grilled meat, and fresh bread floated in the air, mingling with the murmur of conversations, the clinking of cutlery, and the soft sound of a lute being played in a corner. Tariq, in a rare moment of impulsivity, had decided to take Layla out to lunch outside the palace. He hoped that the change of scenery, the vibrancy of the outside world, might brighten his daughter a little, and perhaps, for a brief moment, make her feel like an ordinary girl, free from the walls that surrounded her. They were seated at a discreet table in the corner, Layla's wheelchair positioned carefully so she could observe the movement without being the center of attention. Tariq, disguised in simpler clothing and a turban that covered part of his face, still exuded an aura of authority that made other customers and restaurant staff look twice, sensing an unusual presence. Layla, with her curious and wide-open eyes, observed the movement of the restaurant. It was a world so different from the polished silence and meticulous order of the palace. The vibrant colors of people's clothing, the sounds of laughter and animated conversations, the smell of food she had never tasted. Everything was new and fascinating. She was excited, but also a little overwhelmed by the intense sounds and smells. A mixture of excitement and anxiety. When the food arrived, a plate of rice with lamb and vegetables, carefully cut for her, Tariq began to help her. He was clumsy, his large hands accustomed to wielding a scepter or signing decrees, seemed strange holding a small fork. He tried with patience, but frustration was beginning to accumulate in his eyes, a glimmer of desperation that Layla knew well. She felt her father's helplessness eating away at him again. Layla, sensing her father's tension, tried to make an effort, her small muscles trembling with the strain, but they wouldn't cooperate as she wanted. A piece of lamb fell from her fork, slightly staining her silk dress. A single tear rolled down the princess's face, not just for the food that fell, but for the feeling of being a burden, of not being able to do something so simple. Sofia, who was passing by the table with a tray of empty glasses, noticed the scene. She didn't see just a man and a child, but the silent anguish that enveloped them. She saw the frustration on the man's face, the sadness in the child's eyes, the small stain on the dress that seemed a symbol of a greater struggle. She didn't see a sultan and a princess, but a father and daughter in a moment of vulnerability, of need. Without hesitation, she set the tray down on a nearby table, the soft clinking of glasses resonating in the murmur of the restaurant, and approached. "Excuse me, sir," said Sofia, her voice soft and calm, without a hint of servility or fear, only genuine concern. "May I help?" Tariq looked up, surprised by the intrusion. He was accustomed to being served, not questioned, and much less to having his privacy invaded by a simple waitress. His eyes met Sofia's, eyes that showed no curiosity or pity, but a genuine offer of help, a silent understanding. He felt a pang of something he couldn't identify, a break in the armor he had built around himself. "My daughter, she has difficulty," Tariq murmured, feeling strangely exposed, as if a veil had been torn from his soul. Shame and pain mingled in his voice. Sofia smiled gently at Layla, a smile that reached her eyes and conveyed an immediate calm. "Hello, princess. What a delicious plate. May I help you eat a little? It's more fun to eat in company, don't you think?" Layla, who was generally shy and distrustful of strangers, felt a wave of warmth and trust emanating from Sofia. Her voice was like a balm, and her eyes conveyed a kindness that Layla rarely found. She nodded slightly, her eyes brightening with renewed hope, a small ray of sun in her shadowy afternoon. Sofia didn't wait for formal permission from Tariq. She took a clean napkin, folded it carefully, and placed it gently under Layla's chin, protecting her dress. Then she took the fork and, with a dexterity and patience that Tariq had never seen in anyone, began to cut the meat into tiny pieces, mixing it with the rice and vegetables. Her movements were fluid, unhurried, as if she were performing the most important task in the world, each gesture laden with innate affection. She didn't speak much, just murmured words of encouragement to Layla, praising her patience and appetite. creating an atmosphere of tranquility and acceptance. "A little rice, princess, and a tender piece of lamb to give you strength," she said, her voice like a soft melody, a whisper of comfort. "You're eating so well. How wonderful." Layla opened her mouth, confident, and Sofia fed her carefully, wiping away any food that might fall with the tip of the napkin. She didn't care about the soiled dress, the looks of other customers who were beginning to notice the scene, or the imposing presence of the man at her side. Her attention was entirely on the child, on ensuring that she felt comfortable and well cared for, that her dignity was preserved. Tariq watched the scene, paralyzed by an emotion that overwhelmed him. His eyes, accustomed to seeing flattery and self-interest in every interaction, were now fixed on Sofia's pure and selfless compassion. He saw the tenderness in her gestures, the patience in her gaze, the complete absence of judgment. No one, not even the best-paid caregivers in the palace, who were trained for efficiency, had demonstrated such naturalness and affection. They were efficient, yes, but there was always a barrier, a formality, a professional distance. Sofia, however, was there, bent over his daughter, with an intimacy that seemed to have been born from years of living together, of a deep and unconditional love. A wave of overwhelming emotion struck him. It was as if a dam, built over years of pain, isolation, and wounded pride, had finally broken. The tears, which he thought he had dried forever, which he had suppressed for a decade, began to roll freely down his face, warm and liberating. They were not tears of sadness, but of profound relief, of a gratitude that suffocated him, that made him feel small and at the same time immensely grateful. He saw in Sofia not just a waitress, but an angel, a reflection of the kindness he had forgotten existed in the world, a reminder that humanity still possessed purity. He saw his daughter, Layla, smiling, eating with an appetite she rarely showed, and peace settled in his heart, a peace he hadn't felt since Zara's death. When Layla finished eating, Sofia wiped her mouth with the napkin and smiled. "Very well, princess. You ate everything. What a strong and brave girl you are." Layla looked at Sofia with adoration, her eyes large and bright. "Thank you, Sofia," she said, using the name she had read on the waitress's badge, a name that now seemed the most beautiful sound in the world. Sofia blushed slightly, surprised at being called by her name and by the intimacy the princess showed. She was about to apologize for having intruded, for having dared to touch the princess when Tariq stood up. His chair scraped the floor, drawing the attention of some nearby customers who now watched the scene with curiosity and amazement. He was trembling, but his voice, though choked with emotion and hoarse from tears, was firm and laden with an authority that could not be concealed. "Miss," he began, his voice deep and resonant, I have never seen such kindness, such purity of heart." He paused, wiping his tears with the sleeve of his garment, not caring about the image he presented. "I am Sultan Tariq al-Hamad." A murmur of astonishment rippled through the restaurant, like a wind blowing across the tables. Customers stopped eating. Waiters froze in their places. Sofia paled, realizing the true identity of the man. The ground seemed to disappear beneath her feet. She had treated the Sultan like a common customer, and now she felt a mixture of dread and confusion, a vertigo that made her sway slightly. "My daughter, Princess Layla, needs someone like you," Tariq continued, ignoring the curious looks and whispers spreading around. "I invite you to come work in my palace, not as a common servant, but as a companion for Layla, someone who can care for her with the same affection and compassion you showed today. I offer you a life of comfort and security for you and your family. Your father will have the best doctors, your siblings will have the best education. Please accept." Sofia was left speechless. Her world, which until then had been summed up in dirty dishes, meager tips, and the daily struggle for survival, was turned upside down in an instant. The offer was grand, almost incredible, something out of a fairy tale. She looked at Layla, who watched her with hopeful eyes, a small smile on her lips, and then at the Sultan, whose eyes, though still wet, radiated an undeniable sincerity, a silent plea. It was an opportunity to change the destiny of her family, to give her siblings a better life, to ease her father's burden. But it was also a leap into the unknown, into a world of opulence and rules she could barely imagine, a world that seemed so distant from hers. I don't know what to say, Your Majesty," Sofia finally managed to stammer, her voice almost a whisper. "Say yes, Miss Sofia," replied Tariq, a thread of hope in his voice, a glimmer of expectation in his eyes. "Say yes and change not only my daughter's destiny, but your own and that of your family." Sofia, with her heart pounding in her chest like a drum, looked at Layla one more time. That small smile, the trust in the princess's eyes, was what sealed her decision. It wasn't just the promise of security, but the connection she felt with the child. "Yes, Your Majesty, I accept." The days that followed were a whirlwind for Sofia. She said goodbye to the golden Oasis, where her colleagues embraced her with tears and congratulations, and explained to her siblings and father the incredible turn in their lives. At first, there was disbelief, nervous laughter, then contained joy, and finally, a deep gratitude that made them cry with relief. Sofia's family would be cared for, her father would receive the best treatments and medicines, and her siblings would have the opportunity to study in the best schools, a dream that had seemed unreachable. The small house in the modest neighborhood was exchanged for a comfortable residence on the outskirts of the palace, with a small garden and all the comforts they had never imagined. Omar and Fatima, with their eyes wide open, explored every corner of the new house, marveling at the abundance. Sofia's arrival at the Al Hamad Palace was a discreet but significant event. She felt like a fish out of water, surrounded by luxury and formality that made her feel small and out of place. The corridors were vast, the gardens immense, and every piece of furniture seemed to be worth more than everything she had ever owned in her life. The servants and guards watched her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Who is this simple waitress that the Sultan had brought within his walls, who now had unrestricted access to the princess? Some whispered, others looked at her with distrust, but Sofia, with her humility and gentleness, soon began to win hearts. However, Layla's presence was her safe harbor, the anchor that kept her steady in the midst of a sea of novelties. The princess, who had become attached to Sofia from their first meeting, received her with a warm embrace and a radiant smile that dispelled any doubt. From that day on, Sofia became Layla's shadow, her companion, her confidant. She was not a nanny, nor a servant, but a friend, an older sister, a kindred spirit who understood the princess's loneliness. Sofia brought to the palace a simplicity and authenticity that had been absent for a long time. She didn't treat Layla with pity, as many did, but with respect and encouragement. Seeing in her not a deficiency, but a vibrant spirit, she helped her dress, eat, and move, but always encouraging her independence, seeking ways for Layla to do things herself, adapting the environment and tools. She read to Layla, Not just the history and poetry books the princess loved, but also folk tales and legends for her own neighborhood, expanding Layla's world beyond the palace walls, showing her common life, the joys and sorrows of the people. They spent hours in the gardens, where Sofia described the smell of wet earth after rain, the song of birds Layla had never noticed before, the texture of tree leaves, the shape of clouds in the sky, teaching Layla to use all her senses to experience the world. Sofia invented games that Layla could play while seated, adapted the rules, and together, they created a universe of imagination and discovery. Tariq observed his daughter's transformation with a mixture of admiration and relief. Layla was happier, more vibrant. Her eyes shone with a new light, and her laughter echoed through the palace corridors more frequently, a sound that was once rare and now became common. He saw Sofia not just caring for Layla, but teaching her to live, to find joy in small things, to not define herself by her limitations. Sofia had a way of making Layla feel capable, of finding creative solutions to the challenges her condition imposed. She adapted games, invented stories, and above all, listened to Layla with a full attention that the princess rarely received, validating her feelings and thoughts. Slowly, Sofia's presence began to break down Tariq's emotional barriers. He found himself seeking her out, wanting to know about Layla's day, about the new discoveries they had made. He began to converse with Sofia, not about matters of state, but about life, about the challenges of parenthood, about his deepest fears and hopes. Sofia, with her simple wisdom and humble perspective on life, offered Tariq a point of view he had never considered, a vision of the world that went beyond the palace walls and the concerns of royalty. She taught him that true strength was not in power or wealth, but in the resilience of the human spirit, in the capacity to love and connect, in unshakable faith in goodness. He learned from her to see Layla not as a source of sadness or a reminder of his loss, but as a source of inspiration, a miracle of strength and joy. Sofia helped him understand that Tariq's excessive protection, though well-intentioned, was suffocating Layla's spirit, preventing her from flourishing. She encouraged him to allow Layla to explore more, to take risks, to make mistakes and learn from them, to live fully within her possibilities. Tariq, who once saw Layla's disability as a curse, began to see it as part of who Layla was, and to love that part too. He began to participate more actively in the activities of Layla and Sofia, reading stories with them, observing their drawings, and even trying to adapt some games. The relationship between Tariq and Sofia evolved from gratitude to deep respect, and then to something more subtle and powerful, a feeling he never thought he would feel again. It was a connection based on mutual admiration, on sharing an unconditional love for Layla, and on discovering a kindred spirit in an unexpected place. Tariq, the powerful and lonely sultan, found in Sofia a companion, someone who saw him not for his title, but for his heart, for his humanity. Sofia, the humble waitress, found a purpose, a family, and a place where her kindness and intelligence were valued above all else, where she could make a difference. The nightly conversations in the palace garden, under the light of the stars, became a ritual. They talked about everything, about life, about faith, about the challenges of governing and living. Tariq opened up about the pressures of the kingdom, and Sofia shared stories from her people, the difficulties and joys of common life, offering a perspective that Tariq, in his ivory tower, had lost. He found himself laughing more, feeling lighter, more human. Months transformed into years. Layla flourished under Sofia's care. she learned to paint with vibrant colors, to play an adapted instrument that Sofia had helped design, and even to write stories that were read to the children of palace employees, who came to listen to her with admiration. Her disability did not disappear, but her life became full and rich, filled with meaning and purpose. She became a young woman of keen intelligence and a generous heart, inspiring everyone around her with her resilience and joy. Sofia, in turn, was no longer the simple waitress. She became a respected figure on the palace, an informal advisor to Tariq on matters related to the well-being of his people. Her perspective on the difficulties of common life helped Tariq become a more empathetic and just ruler, implementing support programs for the most needy, building schools and hospitals inspired by the stories Sofia shared and by the needs she helped him see. The kingdom prospered not just in wealth, but in spirit. With a people more united and cared for, the compassion Sofia had shown that day in the restaurant not only changed the destiny of Layla and her own family, but also transformed the kingdom. Tariq, once a distant sultan focused on his own suffering, became a leader who deeply cared about the well-being of his subjects, a man who had learned the true meaning of service and empathy through the example of a simple but extraordinary woman. Sofia's faith, which was once a personal force, became an inspiration for the entire kingdom, showing that true devotion manifests itself in acts of kindness and service. On a sunny day, years after the encounter at the Golden Oasis, Sultan Tariq and Sofia were sitting in the palace gardens in the shade of an ancient date palm, watching Layla, now a radiant young woman, laughing as she taught a group of children to paint. The wheelchair was still there, but it did not define Layla. She was free in spirit, radiant in her joy, a source of light for all who knew her. The air was perfumed with jasmine, and the song of birds filled the atmosphere with a soft melody. Tariq took Sofia's hand, his eyes meeting hers in a look of deep connection and love. "Sofia," he said, his voice full of emotion and gratitude, "you brought light to my life and to Layla's life. You taught me what true faith is, faith in human goodness, in the capacity to love without limits, to see beauty in fragility and strength in compassion. You redeemed me from my own darkness." Sofia smiled, her eyes glistening with happiness. "Your Majesty, compassion is a powerful force. It connects us. It transforms us. I only followed what my heart told me, the voice of my faith that urged me to help. True faith is not just in prayers, but in the actions we take for others." Tariq squeezed her hand with affection, "And for that, my heart and Layla's heart will be eternally grateful. You are not just my daughter's companion, Sofia. You are the companion of my life, the light that illuminates my path, and the queen of my heart, if you will allow it." Sofia, with a smile that radiated pure happiness, nodded, her eyes shining with tears of joy. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, reflecting off the golden domes of the palace, as if the sky itself were celebrating that moment. The gentle breeze carried the perfume of flowers and the distant sound of children's laughter. That day, in the restaurant, a waitress's compassion had fed a sultan's faith, not just in God, but in humanity, in the power of love, and in the capacity of a single act of kindness to rewrite destinies, transforming loneliness into a family, pain into purpose, and hope into a vibrant reality full of love. Sultan Tariq, Princess Layla, and Sofia, the former waitress, had found, together, an oasis of happiness that transcended all barriers of class and circumstance. proving that the human heart, when guided by compassion, can truly change the world, one act of kindness at a time.